The dark phase. Every trader hits right before becoming profitable. Chapter 1. The Collapse of Confidence. There's a hidden breaking point in every trader's journey. This moment isn't obvious. It's impossible to see from the outside. It's not the first big win. It's not the moment you discover your edge. It's the moment right before everything falls apart, when your confidence shatters, when your strategy stops working, when everything you thought you knew suddenly feels useless. That moment when the markets test us and try to kick us out of the game. Some give up and leave. They return to their daily routines and remember trading as just a memory. But others, after living through that moment, decide to change, and nothing is ever the same again. You wake up one morning, open your charts, and nothing makes sense anymore. The patterns that used to be so clear now look random. The setups that once gave you confidence now fill you with doubt. You start questioning everything, your system, your discipline, even your ability to think clearly under pressure. This is the dark phase, the stage where most traders either quit or transform. It doesn't announce itself. There's no warning sign. One day you're trading with certainty, and the next you're drowning in self-doubt. Your account might still be intact, but your mental state is collapsing. Every trade feels like a gamble. Every decision feels heavy. What's the point, you ask? Does the market even know my strategy exists? What makes this phase so dangerous is that it looks like failure from the outside. Your friends think you're giving up. Your family questions why you're still doing this. Even you start wondering if maybe everyone was right. Maybe trading isn't for you. Maybe you've wasted all this time chasing something impossible. But here's the truth. Most traders never discover. This dark phase isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're about to break through. It's the final test before mastery. The market isn't rejecting you, it's refining you. Every moment of doubt, every loss that feels personal, every sleepless night replaying your mistakes. It's all part of a transformation you can't see yet. If you pass this final stage, everything will change forever. But the question is, can you pass it? Can you survive until that stage? Who knows? The markets have succeeded in taking the last dollar from millions of people's pockets, and they continue to do it every day. So tell me, what makes you different? We all know very well that when you first start trading, everything feels possible. You learn the basics, study the charts, watch videos about millionaire traders living their dream lives. You imagine yourself making consistent profits, quitting your job, traveling the world while trading from your laptop. The vision is so clear, so exciting, working 2 hours a day and easily earning your old job's salary. This business has no difficulty anyway. How could you have known? Then reality hits. You take your first real losses, not demo losses, real money disappearing from your account. Suddenly, trading doesn't feel like a game anymore. It feels personal. Every red candle feels like the market is specifically targeting you. You start analyzing everything. Why did that trade fail? What did I miss? Should I change my strategy? At first, you try to fix it with more knowledge. You watch more videos, read more books, join more trading groups. You convince yourself that the answer is out there somewhere, a better indicator, a secret pattern, a perfect entry technique. But no matter how much you learn, the losses keep coming, and the inevitable happens. Congratulations, you've survived until the dark phase. The real game is just beginning. That's when the dark phase truly begins, when you realize that knowledge isn't your problem, when you learn that execution is. You know what to do, but you can't do it consistently. Your emotions keep sabotaging you. Fear makes you exit too early. Greed makes you hold too long. Impatience makes you force trades that aren't there. You start noticing a painful pattern. Every time you follow your plan perfectly, you lose. Every time you break your rules on impulse, you win. The market seems to reward chaos and punish discipline. That psychological trap is what breaks most traders. When logic stops producing results, faith disappears, and we lose control. This is where many people quit. They decide trading is rigged, too difficult, or simply not worth the mental torture. They walk away believing they gave it their best shot. But the ones who stay, the ones who push through this fog of confusion, they're the ones who eventually discover something profound. Don't get me wrong, this isn't easy at all. In fact, it's extremely difficult and something very few people can achieve. Markets are mechanisms designed precisely to beat us and our psychology. And markets aren't human. They don't have emotions like you do. They always do what they need to do. Markets don't need to take initiative. Markets don't have a bill to pay on Friday. But you do. You have debts, bills, and needs. While time is this critical for you, markets have infinite time. So whose side do you think the advantage is on? When we think about all of this, isn't it a bit optimistic to dream of becoming a profitable trader? But don't worry, don't lose hope. I'll explain how you can do it. But first, you must fully understand the dark phase. The dark phase isn't about your strategy failing. It's about your psychology being tested. The market is showing you every weakness you still carry. Your need for control, your addiction to being right, your inability to accept uncertainty. It's stripping away everything that doesn't serve you as a trader. Right now, if you're in this phase, you probably feel alone, like you're the only one struggling while everyone else seems to have figured it out. But listen closely. Every single profitable trader you admire went through this exact stage. They just don't talk about it because there's no glory in the struggle. The transformation happens in silence. Either this phase kicks you out of the game, or you become a profitable trader and live the life you want. No more same cycles, same mistakes, same regrets. You become profitable, stable, and disciplined. Chapter 2. The Emotional Battlefield. Most traders think the market is their opponent. They study price action, analyze volume, decode patterns, believing that if they just understand the charts better, they'll win. But the real battle isn't on the screen. It's inside your head. You can't beat the markets without beating yourself first. The dark phase forces you to face something uncomfortable. You are your own worst enemy. Every impulsive trade you take, every time you move your stop loss, every moment you revenge trade after a loss, it all comes from one source. You, not the market, not your broker, not some hidden algorithm designed to hunt your stops. You. And every mistake feeds the next one. Every wrong decision leads to another wrong decision. Every trade outside your system that seems simple to you becomes a much bigger cost reflected in your account at the end of the month. That realization hits hard because it means you can't blame anyone else anymore. You can't say the market was unfair. You can't complain that you were unlucky. You have to look in the mirror and admit that your biggest obstacle is your own mind. If you can't accept this, you can't stay in this game. During this phase, your emotions become weapons the market uses against you. Fear whispers that every setup will fail. Greed screams to double your position when you're winning. Impatience demands you enter before confirmation. Ego refuses to accept small losses. All of these voices compete for control, and most of the time they win. They take the wheel instead of you. You become nothing but their puppet. They run the show however they want, and you just watch. But while watching, you notice something. You start seeing patterns in your behavior that you've been ignoring. You notice that every time you take a big loss, it's preceded by the same sequence. A small loss that bruises your ego, a feeling that you need to make it back immediately, an impulsive trade that breaks your rules, another loss, frustration, anger, and then the cycle repeats. In fact, you're not just experiencing the same things over and over. You're being pushed to experience the same things by the same triggers. If you realize this, you can ignite the spark of change. This is the emotional battlefield, where your discipline goes to die, where your trading plan gets abandoned the moment pressure builds. You thought you were disciplined. You believed you had control. But the market has a way of exposing the truth. Under stress, your real self emerges. The one who panics, the one who chases, the one who can't sit still. We've all been there. I had a plan I made 10 minutes ago. I was definitely going to stick to it. No matter what, I was going to follow that plan. Then we all know what happened. Back to square one. Some traders try to solve this with stricter rules. They create rigid systems with dozens of conditions, hoping that more structure will force discipline. But rules don't fix emotions. You can have the perfect system and still break every rule when fear takes over. That's the trap. You're not lacking better rules. You're lacking emotional control. So how do we achieve this? The dark phase teaches you something crucial. Trading isn't about predicting what the market will do. It's about controlling how you react when it does. You can't control whether your next trade wins or loses, but you can control whether you follow your plan. That shift in perspective changes everything. You begin to realize that every trade is a test of your emotional state. Can you stay calm when price moves against you? Can you accept a loss without needing revenge? Can you take profit without feeling like you're missing out on more? These questions reveal your true level of mastery. For those who really want to understand how their mind works in the market, there's a powerful framework that breaks down the psychology of every trading decision. It's the kind of insight that doesn't come from watching videos. It comes from deep reflection on your own patterns. If that sounds like something you'd value, there are resources designed specifically for this kind of internal work. What you need isn't more strategies, not more capital. You need to look at yourself and take responsibility. The traders who survive this phase stop trying to control outcomes. They focus on controlling themselves. They accept that the market is random in the short term, but their reactions don't have to be. They understand that losing is part of the process, but breaking discipline is optional. This is how they survive. This is how they get through the most difficult losing streaks. And suddenly, one properly managed trade compensates for all their losing streaks, even though they weren't targeting this, even though they weren't chasing it desperately. They get rewarded by the market simply because they focused on the right thing. This level of self-awareness doesn't happen overnight. It's built through pain. Through watching yourself make the same mistakes repeatedly until the pattern becomes so obvious you can't ignore it anymore. You reach a point where you can no longer be a spectator to this. You can't tolerate it anymore. Through feeling the shame of blowing an account, not because your system failed, but because you couldn't control yourself. Your stomach turns. You're sick of making the same mistakes. At some point during this emotional war, you hit a breaking point, a moment where you're so tired of losing to yourself that you finally surrender. Not surrender as in giving up. Surrender as in letting go of the need to control everything. You stop fighting the market. You stop fighting your emotions. You start accepting reality as it is, as it should be. That's when something shifts. You realize you don't need to feel confident to take a trade. You just need to follow your plan. You don't need to know what will happen next. You just need to manage risk. You don't need to be right every time. You just need to be consistent. Your need for control disappears. You only need to follow your rules. You relax. Making money becomes easier now. This emotional neutrality is the foundation of every profitable trader. It's not about being emotionless like a robot. It's about being aware of your emotions without letting them make your decisions. You feel fear, but you trade anyway. You feel greed, but you stick to your plan. You feel frustration, but you don't revenge trade. The battlefield isn't the charts, it's your mind. And the moment you win that battle, everything else becomes easier. Chapter 3. The Identity Crisis. There comes a point in the dark phase where you start questioning your entire identity as a trader. You ask yourself the questions you've been avoiding. Am I actually good at this? Or have I just been lucky? Do I have what it takes? Or am I forcing something that isn't meant for me? Should I go back to my old job? Maybe this isn't for me. This identity crisis is brutal because it attacks the foundation of why you started. Maybe you got into trading to prove something, to show people you could succeed outside the traditional path, to build freedom, to escape the 9-to-5 grind. But now, after months or even years of struggling, those dreams feel naive. You thought it would be so easy. You faced how difficult it really was, and through trading, you've probably become mentally much stronger than before. But after closing the day at a loss, none of that matters anymore. You look at your trading journal and the numbers don't lie. More red than green, more losses than wins, more frustration than progress. You start wondering if you've been delusional this whole time. Maybe the profitable traders you see online are just the lucky few. Maybe the rest of us are just feeding the market. Maybe our dreams are just dreams. I know it's brutal, but I said the dark phase. This phase is where most people quit, not because they run out of money, but because they run out of belief. They can't reconcile the gap between who they thought they'd become and who they actually are. The vision of the confident, profitable trader feels so far from their current reality that it seems impossible to reach. They know what they need to do, but they can't execute. But they still haven't given up. But here's what's really happening during this identity crisis. You're not losing yourself. You're shedding the false version. The version that thought trading would be easy. The version that believed a good strategy was enough. The version that underestimated the mental warfare required to succeed. Every trader starts with an idealized image of what trading will be like. Calm mornings, simple decisions, consistent profits. But the reality is messy, it's emotional, it's unpredictable. And that gap between expectation and reality creates a painful dissonance. You thought you were patient, but the market showed you otherwise. You thought you were disciplined, but your trading history proves you're not. You thought you were rational, but your emotional reactions say something different. The trader you imagined yourself to be doesn't match the trader you actually are. That's the crisis. You're facing it, and you're not happy with what you see. Some traders respond by pretending. They post their wins on social media. They talk confidently in trading groups. They act like they have it all figured out. But inside, they're drowning in doubt. The performance becomes exhausting. Eventually, the mask cracks. Others respond by running. They switch strategies constantly, hoping the next one will be the magic solution. They blame their losses on external factors, not on themselves. They don't want to hurt their ego. They convince themselves that if they just had more capital or better tools or insider knowledge, then they'd be profitable. But deep down, they know the truth. The problem isn't external, it's internal. The problem is us. The problem is me. We must look in the mirror and accept this. You're in a difficult game. So am I. But it's not impossible. The traders who make it through this crisis do something different. They stop pretending and start accepting. They admit they're not where they want to be. They acknowledge their weaknesses without shame. They understand that transformation requires honesty, and they start being brutally honest with themselves. This acceptance is painful, but necessary. You have to face the truth about your current skill level. You have to admit that you're not as disciplined as you thought, that you're not as patient as you believed, that your emotions have more control than you realized. Only then can you start rebuilding. Only then can you change. During this phase, you also start to separate your self-worth from your trading results. This is extremely, extremely important. Please don't forget this. A losing trade doesn't make you a failure. It makes you a trader who took a loss. A winning trade doesn't make you a genius. It makes you someone who executed properly this time. You begin to see that your value as a person isn't determined by your P&L. Learning this alone is a huge step in the right direction. For anyone navigating this identity shift, understanding the deeper layers of trader psychology can make the difference between quitting and breaking through. There's a certain clarity that comes from hearing these truths laid out in a way that resonates. Sometimes that's what finally clicks. This detachment from outcomes is liberating. You stop needing every trade to validate you. You stop seeing losses as personal attacks. You start treating trading like what it really is, a game of probabilities where you only control your actions, not the results. The identity crisis ends when you stop trying to be the trader you thought you should be and start becoming the trader the market is shaping you into. Someone humble, someone patient, someone who understands that mastery isn't about never losing. It's about never losing control. You realize that your old identity had to die for the new one to be born. The confident beginner who thought trading was simple had to transform into the realistic professional who knows it's complex. That transformation is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And if you've made it this far, you're probably going through this stage. When you finally accept who you are right now, flaws and all, you stop resisting growth. You stop fighting the process. You surrender to the journey, and that's when the dark phase starts to lift. Not because the market got easier, but because you became stronger. Chapter 4. The Silent Transformation. This isn't how you imagined it when you first started trading. You should have been rich by now. You should have been much freer than before. But you obsessed over the charts. To solve this puzzle, to take your freedom into your own hands, you sacrificed hours every day. You kept doing this even when you lost money. These aren't easy things. People outside can't understand you. All these processes you've been through brought you here. You're probably still not profitable, and you wonder if you ever will be. Believe me, there's hope. You can be. But if you decide to change and face yourself, I won't sell you dreams. It won't be easy from here on out either. But at least please stop doing the same things and expecting different results. Get a grip and change something. But this time, don't change your strategy. Change your thoughts, your approach. Let's talk about the silent transformation. The most important changes in trading don't happen on your screen. They happen inside you, and they happen so quietly that you don't even notice them at first. This is the stage where you're evolving, but it doesn't feel like progress because your account balance isn't reflecting it yet. You start noticing small shifts in your behavior. You don't check your phone every 5 minutes anymore. You don't feel the urge to force a trade when nothing's happening. You can watch a setup develop and walk away if it doesn't meet your criteria. These seem like minor changes, but they're massive. These changes transform the entire game. The silent transformation is where discipline stops being a struggle and starts becoming a habit. You're no longer fighting yourself to follow your rules. You're just following them. This is your natural state now, not because you're motivated, but because it's become your default response. That's when you know something fundamental has changed. You realize you're on the right path, and when you see how easily you can generate profit, you're amazed. You question how you resisted change for so long, how you ignored it. Your relationship with losses shifts too. A bad trade used to ruin your entire day. Now it's just data. You analyze what went wrong, adjust if needed, and move on. You don't carry the emotional weight anymore. You understand that one trade means nothing in the bigger picture. What matters is the next 100 trades. You're so much stronger now. Your frame, your identity doesn't shake with a single trade. You know what you're doing. You trust yourself. And you have strong reasons for it. This phase also brings a new level of patience. You stop measuring your progress day by day and start thinking in months. You accept that growth isn't linear. Some weeks you'll feel like you've mastered everything. Other weeks you'll feel like you've learned nothing. But you keep showing up. You might not take a trade for weeks. This doesn't bother you. One of the biggest transformations happens in how you consume information. You stop seeking new strategies. You stop watching endless YouTube videos looking for the secret edge. You realize that you already have everything you need. The problem was never your system. It was your execution. So instead of searching externally, you start refining internally. You begin to trust your process, even when results aren't immediate, even when you go through losing streaks. You know that as long as you're following your plan, the probabilities will eventually work in your favor. That trust is what separates amateurs from professionals. If you've managed to get this far, it means you've left behind 99% of the traders in the game. Congratulations. During this silent phase, something else happens. You start to feel calm in situations that used to make you anxious. Price spikes against your position, and you don't panic. You hit your stop loss, and you don't feel defeated. You miss a trade, and you don't feel FOMO. You've built emotional resilience without even realizing it. An unshakable will and discipline accompany this. This calmness isn't because you've stopped caring. It's because you've stopped attaching your emotions to outcomes. You care about your process, not individual results. You understand that you can do everything right and still lose, and that's okay. The market doesn't owe you anything. It never did and never will. People around you might not notice the changes. They still see you staring at charts. They still hear you talk about trading. But you know something's different. You're not the same trader you were 6 months ago. You're more patient, more focused, more grounded. The chaos that used to live inside you had been replaced with structure. You're so much calmer now, so much less stressed. Life starts to normalize. The chaos lightens. You have more time. Finally, you see all that time you invested starting to bear fruit. If you've been feeling this shift but struggling to articulate it, you're not alone. Many traders experience this quiet evolution and don't realize how significant it is until much later. There's something powerful about understanding the stages you're moving through, even when progress feels invisible. The silent transformation is where real growth lives. It's not flashy. It's not exciting. You won't post about it on social media because there's nothing to show yet. But internally, you're building the foundation that will eventually support consistent profitability. You stop comparing yourself to others. You don't care that someone else made $10,000 this week. You're focused on your own journey. You understand that everyone's path is different. Some people get profitable quickly, others take years. Neither is right or wrong. What matters is that you keep moving forward. One day, you'll look back at your old trading journal and barely recognize the person who wrote those entries. The fear, the desperation, the emotional reactions. It'll feel like reading someone else's story. That's how you'll know the transformation was real. The silent transformation doesn't announce itself. It just happens. One decision at a time. One disciplined trade at a time. One moment of patience at a time. Until one day, you realize you're no longer struggling. You're just trading. Chapter 5. The Moment of Clarity. There's a specific moment that every trader who makes it through the dark phase experiences. It's not dramatic. There's no celebration. It's quiet, almost anticlimactic. But it changes everything. You're sitting in front of your charts, same as always. You see a setup developing. You analyze it, check your rules, confirm your bias, enter the trade, manage your risk, and then you close your laptop and walk away. No anxiety, no obsessive checking, no emotional attachment to the outcome. You're acting correctly now, thinking and moving correctly. And just as one wrong decision leads to another, one right decision will bring the next. Momentum will move in your favor, and you might have trouble believing how quickly everything improves. Time passes, and your trade comes to mind. Hours later, you check back. The trade hit your target. You made money. But here's the strange part. You don't feel euphoric. You don't feel the rush you used to get from winning. You just feel neutral, like you did your job and the market rewarded it. That neutrality is the moment of clarity. If you're feeling this way, you're on the right path. Or let's say the trade didn't turn out that way. The trade hit your stop loss. You lost money. But you don't feel angry. You don't want revenge. You don't question your entire system. You just accept it as part of the process. You followed your plan. The market went the other way. That's trading. You move on. As it should be. You don't need to rediscover the world over and over again after every trade because of a single outcome. You know this very well now. This moment of clarity is when you finally realize that you're no longer trading emotionally. You've separated yourself from the results. You've learned to trust your edge without needing constant validation. You've become consistent, not because you're winning every trade, but because you're executing every trade the same way. You start to see trading differently. It's no longer a way to prove yourself. It's no longer an escape from your problems. It's just a skill, a craft, something you do with discipline and patience. The pressure you used to feel disappears because you've stopped making it about your identity, because your entire perspective has changed. everything in the process changes. All your emotions change, and suddenly you're living a new life. The clarity also brings perspective. You understand now why you had to go through the dark phase. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every loss taught you patience. Every mistake taught you discipline. Every emotional breakdown taught you control. You couldn't skip those lessons. You had to live them. You begin to notice that your decisions are faster now, but not impulsive. They're faster because you've internalized your process. You don't overthink anymore. You see the setup. You execute. You manage. You're no longer paralyzed by doubt or rushing in from greed. You've found the balance. Another shift happens in how you talk about trading. You stop trying to convince people it works. You stop defending your choices. If someone asks, you share your experience. If they doubt you, you let them. You don't need external validation anymore because you've found internal certainty. For those still searching for that moment of clarity, sometimes it helps to hear how others found it. The patterns, the realizations, the mindset shifts that made the difference. That kind of insight doesn't come from surface-level advice. It comes from deep, honest reflection on what actually works. The moment of clarity isn't about suddenly knowing the future. It's about no longer needing to. You trust your system. You trust your risk management. You trust that over time, probabilities will work in your favor. That trust removes fear. And without fear, you can finally trade freely. You also start to understand the concept of detachment, not in a cold, unfeeling way, but in a healthy way. You care about your trading, but you don't let it consume you. You want to be profitable, but you don't need it to validate your existence. You found peace in the process, regardless of the outcome. This is the stage where trading becomes enjoyable again. Not because you're winning every trade, but because you've removed the emotional suffering. You're no longer at war with the market or yourself. You're just participating, observing, executing, adapting. The moment of clarity doesn't mean you'll never have doubts again. You will. It doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. You will. But now you have a foundation, a mental framework that helps you navigate uncertainty without falling apart. That's the real edge. Some traders reach this moment and feel a strange sense of anticlimactic relief. They expected profitability to feel more exciting, more validating. But instead, it just feels normal. Like they're finally doing what they were supposed to be doing all along. That normalcy is the sign of true mastery. The dark phase ends not with a bang, but with a quiet acceptance. You accept the market for what it is. You accept yourself for where you are. And you accept that growth is a never-ending process. There's no finish line, just continuous evolution. Chapter 6. The Trader You've Become. When you finally emerge from the dark phase, you're not the same person who entered it. You've been stripped down, rebuilt, and transformed in ways you didn't expect. The trader staring back at you in the mirror is calmer, wiser, and far more resilient than the one who started this journey. You now understand that trading was never about the charts. It was always about you. Your ability to stay disciplined when emotions scream to react. Your capacity to accept uncertainty without needing control. Your willingness to trust a process even when results lag behind effort. The dark phase taught you something invaluable, that suffering in trading is optional. Losses are mandatory. But suffering is a choice. You can take a loss and let it destroy your day, or you can take a loss and analyze it calmly. You can experience a drawdown and panic, or you can experience a drawdown and adjust. The market gives you the situation. You choose the response. You've also learned that consistency isn't about perfection, it's about showing up. You don't need to have perfect trades. You need to have disciplined trades. You don't need to win every day. You need to execute your plan every day. That shift from outcome-focused to process-focused is what unlocks long-term profitability. Your relationship with money has changed too. You used to see every dollar gained or lost as a measure of your worth. Now you see it as feedback. Money flows in when you execute well. It flows out when you don't. It's neutral. The emotional charge is gone. You no longer feel the need to trade every day. Some days you sit out completely because there's no setup worth taking. That patience used to feel impossible. Now it feels natural. You've realized that doing nothing is also a position, and sometimes it's the most profitable one. The traders who never made it through the dark phase are still where you used to be. Chasing setups, overtrading, revenge trading, blowing accounts. You don't judge them because you remember what that felt like. You just know that until they face their own darkness, they won't break through either. You've become someone who values peace over profit. Not because profit doesn't matter, but because you understand that profit comes from peace. When you're calm, you think clearly. When you think clearly, you execute properly. When you execute properly, results follow. It's that simple. Every professional trader will tell you the same thing if they're honest. The dark phase was the most important part of their journey. It's where they were forged, where their character was tested, where they either quit or evolved. And the ones who evolved never regret the pain, because they know it made them who they are. If you're currently in the dark phase, understand this. You're closer than you think. The fact that you're still here, still trying, still learning, that's proof you're built for this. Most people would have quit already, but you didn't. That resilience is your edge. The dark phase doesn't last forever. It just feels like it does. One day, you'll wake up and realize you're on the other side. You won't know exactly when it happened, but you'll feel different. Calmer, stronger, more in control. And you'll understand that every sleepless night, every frustrating loss, every moment of doubt, it all had a purpose. You were being prepared, not just to be profitable, but to be the kind of trader who can sustain profitability. Because making money once is luck. Making money consistently is mastery. And mastery only comes through transformation. The trader you've become isn't perfect. You still make mistakes. You still have losing trades. You still feel emotions. But now you know how to manage them. You know how to stay grounded when the market gets chaotic. You know how to trust yourself even when results don't show up immediately. This version of you doesn't need external validation. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You're not trading to impress people. You're trading because you've built something valuable inside yourself: discipline, patience, emotional control. These are skills that go beyond trading. They shape who you are in every aspect of life. For those who have made it through and want to help others do the same, or for those still in the thick of it needing that deeper understanding, there are tools designed specifically for this transformation, not quick fixes, not magic strategies, but real psychological frameworks that address the core of what makes or breaks a trader. You look back at the dark phase now with a mix of emotions: gratitude because it shaped you, relief because you survived it, and respect because you know how rare it is to make it through. Most traders don't, but you did. The market will always be unpredictable. It will always challenge you. But now you have something it can't take away: internal stability, the ability to stay consistent regardless of external chaos. That's your real edge, not your strategy, not your indicators, you. And as you move forward, you carry the lessons of the dark phase with you. You remember what it felt like to doubt yourself, to question everything, to feel lost. That memory keeps you humble. It reminds you that trading is a never-ending journey of growth. The trader you've become is someone who understands that the real battle was never against the market. It was always against yourself. And the moment you won that battle, everything else fell into place. You've learned that profitability isn't a destination. It's a state of being. It's the natural result of discipline, patience, and emotional control. When you embody those qualities consistently, profit becomes inevitable. This is who you are now, a trader who has faced the darkness and emerged stronger. Someone who knows that the hardest part of trading isn't learning the setups, it's mastering yourself. And you've done exactly that. The dark phase is over. But the journey continues, because once you taste true consistency, you realize there's no ceiling. There's always another level, another lesson, another version of yourself waiting to be discovered. And you're ready for it, because you've already survived the hardest part. Everything from here is just refinement.